Welcome to our 5 on 5. We're pleased to be joined by Oregon Tech President Chris Maples. Chris, good to see you. How are you today?
Delight, Craig. I'm doing well, thank you.
Good to see you again. Thanks for coming. So I know we're looking at fall semester, and we're not there yet, and the numbers aren't final. But are we feeling pretty good about the number of applications?
Fall term's looking pretty good for us. Applications are up, admissions are up. There's a lot of interest in the programs that we have, and so we have a long way to go. We have to really make sure we get people enrolled and on the campus, but things are looking good so far.
Okay, and it's an exciting time for you guys. You have a lot of things happening on campus. And new engineering building, where do we stand there?
New engineering building coming. We got $12 million in bonding from the state to start that process. It's actually a three-phase project where we're taking a larger building that has a lot of high base space and very poor ADA accessibility. And so we're going to ultimately renovate that in two pieces, but in order to have the space to continue to offer our classes, we need to build this smaller new building right next to it. And so that's phase one. There'll be a phase two that renovates half that other larger building, and then a phase three that will do the other half of that building. It's Cornett Hall.
Okay, very good. All right, so the legislature recently appropriated $700 million for higher education. Is that enough? Is this going to keep tuition down?
This is, it's a great step in the right direction, I have to tell you. There have been years and years and years of Oregon disinvestment in higher education. This is a great step. But I'll tell you now, one good rainstorm doesn't end a drought. It's going to take some sustained, continued growth in the funding for higher ed to really get us to where we need to be. At $700 million on a per-student level basis, we're still $55 million below Mississippi. In terms of where we sit in the U.S. We're still in the bottom of the U.S. in funding. And really, it's in terms of keeping tuition down, it's less about keeping tuition down and more about getting our students to complete. Once students arrive at our campuses, we really have to have those student support services in order to get them through and get them to their degree. If we have a lot of people coming in the door and we're not prepared to handle them, and they're not prepared to handle the rigors of a college education, then they get through part of the way, they get funded for their first year or two, and then suddenly the funding starts to dry out. They find themselves in financial circumstances that makes it impossible for them to continue. Well, at that point, they've got a part of a degree, they've got some student debt, and they don't finish. And that's a real challenge, and that's the most important thing for us to do as universities, is to get students finished and get them their degrees.
Okay, so certainly something I want to ask you about. We're going to take a quick break, but free community college, that's something a lot of people are excited about, what it could mean for Oregon.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Oregon Tech President Chris Maples, and we were talking about education and system here in Oregon. Free community college, it's a big headline. Do you see this as something that could become a reality, and could it really help our students?
Well, it's an unknown at this point in time. Tennessee has been running this experiment with some free community college. Now, to go back to the funding that we were talking about on a per-student basis, we've been bumped to $700 million. If we were going to be at the Tennessee level of funding, we'd be at $900 million. So there's some ways to take care of the number of students coming in the door, and that's a really important aspect of this. I think one of the challenges with free community college is how many people show up, what their intent is, and whether or not we can get them graduated with a degree, associate's degree or some other degree, so that they can really do something profitable and good with their lives. I think the promise of it is great. The $10 million set aside is a drop in the bucket in terms of what it's going to really mean and what it's going to really need. And so what I hope is that this experiment is run in a way that we can really evaluate what would be good for the students and what would be good for the economy of Oregon.
What about the changes in the Oregon University system? You guys have so much more autonomy now. Is it working? Is it too soon to say it's a success?
It's early for us. We've only had one board meeting where the board was actually in charge of what we do. And they are a hands-on board. They're very active. They're very interested in what we do. They have been very helpful in Salem. I would tell you that the independent boards came to support the universities in Salem in this past session and were an integral part of the increased funding that the universities got. So the early returns are, yeah, this is great. It's working. It's going well. The costs are still a little unknown for us, and there is an additional cost, but I think there are really a lot of additional opportunities when you have a group of people dedicated to the university, dedicated to the students, knowledgeable about the mission of the university, and really really willing to roll up their sleeves and work on behalf of the students.
Okay, so I've only got about 30 seconds left, but I quickly do want to talk about this. The SOU partnership you guys are working on, autism, is it?
Great partnership, autism, education, certificate to be able to work with autistic kids.
Okay.
And it's a needed expertise in Oregon. We're short those kinds of people.
Very good. Good to see you. Thanks so
A
much for being
delight,
here.
Craig.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.